Welcome to the Economic Empowerment Podcast, where we break down the pathways to financial growth, investment opportunities, and building generational wealth. I'm your host, Ramel Lee, and I'm thrilled to take you on this journey beyond business into a world of possibilities that many don't have the access to see. Each episode, we deep dive into topics like alternative investments, real estate, hotel ownership, and much more, bringing you expert insights, inspirational stories, and actionable advice to help you take control of your financial future. Whether you're an experienced investor or just starting to explore new opportunities, this podcast is here to empower you with knowledge and tools to make informed decisions. But before we get started, I want to remind you, this podcast is for informational purposes only. The content discussed here is not financial advice. Every investment decision carries risk, and it's crucial to do your own research and consult with your personal financial advisor before taking action. Now, let's dive in and explore the exciting world of economic empowerment. Hey everyone, welcome back to another episode of the Economic Empowerment Podcast. It's me, your host, Ramel Lee, and we have a very, very special treat today. We have what I deem the number one hotel broker in the country, right? Mr. Omari Head, the hip hop hotel broker. Mr. Omari, would you mind telling the people a little about yourself?
Absolutely. First and foremost, thank you so much for the platform, Ramel. I appreciate what you're doing as well while you're on your journey and sharing people the blueprint as you're picking it up, man. That's a crucial piece of bringing folks along. So slight correction, you said top hotel broker in the country. I'm going to say the world. The world, Craig.
I love it. I love
it. So pleasure to connect with all you all. My name is Omari Head. I'm a director with Paramount Lodging Advisors. So I do hotel brokerage and advisory. What does that mean? I help people acquire and dispose of hotel assets. So that means I've sold anywhere from limited service hotels to select service, full service hotels, all the way from Albuquerque to Albany, New York. And been doing that for a little bit over a decade, transacted about a little bit over 300 hotels, totaling over $1.2 billion probably in sales. So I have experience in hotel sales, as well as note sales, as well as receivership sales, all of that fun stuff. And now I run a consulting practice, helping folks like yourself and others that are aspiring to get into the hotel space really understand what it means. How do you digest the deal? How do you analyze a deal first and foremost? And really understanding what those metrics are as we look at something that's an operating business on real estate in a franchise model, and understanding the impacts of all of those three things and the intersection as you prepare to invest.
Thank you. Thank you so much for that. And you guys heard that, right? Operating a business on real estate in a franchise model. That's where I stole it from, this guy right here, all right? So Omari, what exactly does a hotel broker do, and how does your role differ from a traditional commercial real estate broker?
Yeah, absolutely. So what a hotel broker does is a variety of different things. Where we tend to differ from other commercial real estate. First of all, this is just a specialized section of commercial real estate. Like you got some folks that do multifamily, you got some folks that do strip malls, and may do, churches and synagogues, that type of thing. Some people tend to focus on one asset class. So if you are a hotel broker, I take that back. If you are a decent hotel broker, where you separate yourself from a general commercial broker is that you understand the metrics that are relevant in hotels. So for example, if somebody calls me right away, specifically another broker, and they say, hey, what is that on a price per square foot? Or what is that on a price per door? I could tell you're not from the hotel space. Very different verbiage, very different metrics. So we have to do evaluation of the business that is sitting within the real estate. That's ultimately what drives the valuation. That is a huge driver. It's not the sole driver, but you do have to understand how to weight that into the valuation. Because there are some places where the dirt is just super valuable. You're in downtown Manhattan, you're in the South Beach, you're in downtown Chicago. At that point, yes, you have a land bank and your dirt is just valuable. There are other places the value of the sticks or bricks is solely driven by the profitability or the potential of the profitability by the business that's in there. Well, how do you evaluate the business? And that's a whole different long conversation. The other piece that we do that separates us from other commercial brokers is that we have a very, very, very acute awareness of what that franchise process looks like. Because in hotel space, a 30-day close is like next to impossible. That whole, I'll give you cash and close in 30 days. That is what we call cap. I can tell immediately, you do not know what you're talking about. You have not done this. And with all due disrespect, leave it to a professional. So what does a professional do? We understand some of those hangups with the various franchisors, what that process looks like. And then on top of that, you have your third party reports that are similar to what you'll see in other classes of commercial real estate. But that franchise piece can really make or break the actual transaction process. And I know a lot of people that have had bad experiences and they've sworn off hotels, and specifically people from my community. A lot of it is because they didn't work with a hotel broker. They were and a seasoned hotel broker. They were working with somebody that was either very, very new to the space, or they were coming out of multifamily, or they're coming out of someplace else. And a lot of other asset classes, they're just playing matchmaker, right? Where somebody will come to you and say, hey, RD Lee Capital Partners, you all want a hotel? I got a hotel. Right. And that's where their services end, is just straight up matchmaking. And it's on you to make as they say, business decision on whether or not it makes sense. There's no advisory component to that. The advisory component is understanding what is the actual valuation of the business. How does the cap rate impact here? How does the franchisor impact here? What does this mean measured to comps? What does this mean measured to incoming supply? What does this mean to exiting supply, room revenue multiples? All of those type of things are unique metrics that we're looking at in this class of commercial real estate.
That's great. That was a lot. I hope you guys had your notepad out, paying attention. You remember, if you subscribe to the podcast, you can always come back to it, rewind, and pick up some more of those jewels that were just dropped. Thank you for that. So can you walk us through the typical life cycle of a hotel acquisition from your perspective as a broker?
Oh, wow. Yeah. So what I do right now is I focus on acquisitions consulting. So what does that look like? It's us out there kissing a million frogs to find one deal. So a lot of it starts out with us, one, narrowing down what is your deal thesis? What are you looking for? What is feasible for you to execute? So a lot of people that come to me and I'm like, well, what price point do you want to be at? Well, that doesn't matter. It does. Right. It does, right? Don't tell me that I can find the money and all this other type of stuff. There's a bunch of, nuance there. So first we got to make sure that you have a comprehensive and flexible investment thesis. The second piece is, let's say that we identify an asset. I go through multiple rounds of valuation. So I do a quick pass on the underwriting and see if it even checks the boxes. A lot of these things that I help my clients understand is just as important as the type of the hotel that you are buying, who you are buying it from is equally as important, right? So don't get caught up necessarily on why they're selling. That is of importance as well, but who you're buying from can really help you or hurt you. So that's where you need to have a keen understanding as well. I do all of that research. So I'm putting together the analysis to say, hey, this pencils, or there's sometimes where I can tell people just from 3-4 things in a conversation, it's not even worth us going pen to paper. It's not going to make sense. Then the second piece, if it does work and it does pencil out, then I really get to go to work. I roll up my sleeves. I get my capital markets team involved. Who are the capital markets folks? They help source debt. And you may say, hey, I've been flipping houses for 10 years. I have a bank that really, really wants to work with me and I have great relationships there. Go talk to them about hotels. Very different conversation. That lending bucket is completely different. One time I sold a hotel, funny enough, the one in Albuquerque. And I mean, the owner was out of New Jersey and the lender was out of Boston, right? Like just it moves in a very different way from other commercial asset classes. So we're making sure that whatever I'm penciling out, that is actually achievable on the debt terms, right? Because that will determine what your cash flow is and your DSCR, your debt service coverage ratio, which is going to be a key piece when you're looking at the underwriting. And will a lender even approve it? And do you just have a very expensive hobby, or are you trying to make money? The next thing that we do is, are we looking at this as a repositioning? Well, I have to do a big investigation into what does it look like to convert this into another brand? What are those incentives available? How do we pencil all of that in so that we leave nothing on the table, so that you don't close and you get across the finish line and somebody's like, yeah, if you had did this, that, you would have had an extra, 80 grand in your pocket, or an extra 800,000 in your pocket. And then you going through the shoulda, coulda, wouldas, right? So it's always important for us to understand that transaction life cycle, like you said, Ramel. And the big piece of it is understanding that you have to have the stamina. I have properties that have been under contract for 4 months, 5 months. I know guys that have had stuff under contract for a year. It is a slow grind sometimes with hotels.
A lot of people, like you said, they get involved in other forms of real estate and think it's the same. And in my conversations with people, I'm telling them, no, it doesn't exactly work like that. So that was a great explanation on that. What are the most important factors you look for when evaluating a hotel property for sale?
Yeah, so I look at when I'm doing my evaluation, I'm looking at it against what my specific client's acquisition criteria is. What is their investment thesis? I know folks that they don't necessarily need a property to make money, or they don't need it to make money today. They're buying it for a different reason. So but most people, they're looking at it and they're saying it has to be profitable within 18 months. And is there a path to profitability through that? So I'm looking at what is the current hotel performance and where can we potentially get it to? Also, what does it look like if there's a downturn? What is it also, what does this thing look like? Yes, of course, I can give you a pro forma and it looks super sexy because I'm projecting 3% average daily rate growth. But what happens if it's static on occupancy and all we have is rate growth? What happens if occupancy declines because you have something that was at the New Orleans airport where the entrance moved, or you have something at the Pittsburgh airport where the entrance moved? All of these type of things, you have to do a really, really, really in-depth environmental scan and understand what you're buying and what else is happening in the market. So sometimes there could be things where it could be a transitioning area. There could be a major economic demand generator coming there. There could be one that was planned that's no longer planned. We've had federal administration changes. All of those type of things are important. But the largest thing is looking at the path to profitability and making sure that it matches with the investor's expectations. Are you looking at this as a 5-year hold? Is it a 10-year hold because it's in an opportunity zone? Or do you have just fund restrictions where folks say, hey, I need to hold it for 10 years. Well, if you're holding for 10 years, I have to be able to inform you that you have to have the capital aside because you're going to have to do something called a property improvement plan. All of those type of things we have to factor in up front so you don't get caught exposed and saying, oh, I thought this because the selling broker that's representing the seller told me this, or I just Googled the answer and that's what I heard. I didn't actually have a professional to help me walk through it.
Like I've been explaining with people with the fund that we launched, we're on a 5-year hold because we're only planning on doing one renovation, if any, right? So we're trying to get out of it before the second one. So that was good to bring that up as far as the holding period. How do you match the right buyer with the right hotel opportunity? Like, especially for like first time or emerging investors? Have you ever stayed in a hotel and thought, what if I owned this? What if you could move from being a guest to being an owner? Hi, I'm Ramel Lee, managing partner of RDL Hotel Fund 1. We've created a unique opportunity for people like you to invest in hotel ownership, an asset class once reserved for the wealthy elite. Hotels, especially economy extended stay properties, are resilient and generate cash flow, even during economic downturns. With as little as $10,000, you can join our movement to democratize wealth and create opportunities for your future. This is your chance to build generational wealth. Don't just stay in hotels, own them. Visit us at www.rdleecp.com to learn more and take your first step today.
Man, that's a great question, brother, because there's a lot of education that goes into it. And that is the answer. The key piece is education, because where people start out thinking that they want, I can't tell you how many people come to me and they're like, oh, I want something within 50 miles of my house. And it's just like, bro, you live in New York, like, and you have a $6 million budget. So, like, that, I can just tell you right now, it's not impossible, but it's probably improbable that,
Right.
that happens. So you might want to be open to looking at something in central Pennsylvania. You might want to be open to looking at something in eastern PA or in, you know, in south or in central NJ. There's all of these different opportunities that people have to be open-minded to. And that's the key piece, because a lot of people come into this, and I can't stress this enough, Ramel. I'm sure you've ran into it, where people come into it with a guest lens, right? Oh, I like to stay at Marriott. I'm Marriott Titanium, so I want to Marriott. I love Hilton. I'm Hilton Diamond, and you know they do it the best, and that's what I want to own. And it's funny, they don't have that perception or that level of education required to unlearn in other asset classes. If you walked up to any of these first-time investors and said, right now, I can show you how to get a McDonald's, they would all say yes, because they understand McDonald's, the profitability, the distribution. You've seen it, you're familiar with it. Ask them if they eat at McDonald's. That's a different story. Now, again, depending on where you are in the wealth curve and your fitness journey, that may still be on the table for you. I enjoy a good fish fillet on occasion, so I'm not going to knock that. I'm not going to yuck your yum, as the kids say. But the other piece is, too, you look at people in multifamily. They want to live in Class A, or, you know, but they'll own, you know, that 4-unit walk-up. Why is it all of a sudden when people come to hotels, they want to jump straight into luxury? They want to do boutique. They have what I call the living room mentality. They just want something that they think is cool for them to hang out in. They want a trophy asset. They want to show it off to their friends. And they just want to hang out in there and kind of be cool owner of this boutique hotel, because they have all these great ideas. And it's like, I'll tell you how to make $1 million in the hotel business. You start out with $3 million, get you a hotel that you don't understand, a boutique or something like that, and you will lose $2 million, and you might have $1 million left over. Like, this is, again, operating business on real estate in a franchise model. The biggest thing, Ramel, is educating people on what makes money. And sometimes it's the most simple thing. It could be that you know, that select service, that limited service product, that economy product that you may not stay at. But if you look at wealth distribution in America, there's a lot of people that exist on that side of the bell curve. That is where a lot of people are traveling. That is where a lot of people are staying. So keep that in mind. Also, there's that competition just looks very differently, as those are easier to evaluate. Those are easier for lenders to get comfortable with, in terms of, as long as it's profitable. Like, there's a lot more ease to your first time having to do those type of properties. That is the biggest thing that I spend the most amount of time, you know, with first timers on.
Yeah, you know, you brought it up, and I always say it's converting that consumer mindset to investor mindset, right? Yeah. People think a lot as a consumer and what they would buy, not necessarily thinking what they can invest in that will make money. And quite frankly, you know, a lot of people who I speak to who say, you know, they want a boutique hotel. I say, well, do you plan on working there? And they say, no. I said, so you're really looking for a vanity project? Really? You're looking, you know, for something that you can decorate and, you know, and say is yours, you know. But you touched on this a bit, but maybe you could go into a little further. What are some of the common mistakes or misconceptions you see investors make during the acquisition process?
Yeah, the biggest one is not seeking consultancy from experts that are in the space. Understand, like, because this is so complex and it's nuanced, and there's not a lot of places that you can go to individually vet the information. What do I mean by that? If you do multifamily, if you were doing a restaurant, you could go to where you work, where you worship, where you get your hair done or cut. Like, and there's somebody that you can get to within 2 to 3 phone calls and be like, you know, I'm buying this 4-unit. Does this sound right? I'm buying this restaurant bar. I'm about to open this restaurant. Does this sound right? And it's like, oh, you know what? I know somebody that did that before. Let me give them a call. Have that conversation about hotels and see how many phone calls it takes you to get to somebody to individually vet the information. Why do I say individually vetting the information? Is because The brands they're incentivized to sell you. The lender will approve you because they get paid first. The listing broker will sell it to you because they get a fee. All of these people are incentivized for you to transact. They may not be incentivized for you to be successful. So you need somebody on your team that understands his community and understands what success looks like and is invested in your success. So that's the biggest mistake is people kind of they've over indexed the valuation of their own personal real estate experience. I get those calls a lot. Well, I know real estate. I've done $50 billion worth of real estate. Cool. Like I'm not knocking that, but just like in medicine, there's really specific focuses, right? Like when you have an issue with your foot, you go to the podiatrist. You don't go to a dentist.
Right.
And so that's what people are doing out here. They're calling somebody for feedback, and they're getting the wrong person, and they don't understand all those things. I just went through that long diatribe about the franchise process. That is a big piece of it as well. Is taking time to really become a student of the industry. So what you're doing is Ramel, is building that context base, building the intellectual capital, right? Bringing people along with it, sharing the knowledge. That is the crucial part. So many people, they just jump out there. They have a dream, they have a mission, but they lack vision, which is how do you actually get this executed?
We're not just raising capital here, right? We're educating people. We're bringing them along in the process. As I learn, I return, right? I give the information that I get. I give back to people. I don't gatekeep. Somebody might be better at this than me, and I'll look to invest with them. So that I just try to keep it going. And like you said, those points of contact, those access is very limited, especially in our community. I think out of all the people I know in my network, 99% of them, I'm the only person they know that has invested in hotels. And so that says a lot, right? They'll know a million people, they'll know a couple people that own a Chick-fil-A. They'll know a lot of people that own that are landlords and own real estate that way. But I'm the only person they know that has invested in hotels. So that you're 100% right about that. There's a lot going on in the world and everything right now, and especially in this country. In your experience, what trends are currently shaping the hotel transaction market?
Man, that's a brilliant question, brother. And that's where I excel in amongst other hotel brokers or acquisitions consultants, is you have to really be a student of not just the hospitality industry, but like you said, what else is going on and the macro and microeconomics. So a lot of people will say like, oh, this is a scary time. It depends. It always depends. It depends on what you're doing. Are you doing acquisitions? Are you doing development? Here's some of the things that I'm watching. One, specifically, what is the impact of tariffs, right? So specifically, I think there's like proposed 25% on imported steel, right? Now, is that an impact to you if you're doing ground up? Maybe, likely. If you're doing conversion, maybe not. Right? It all differences. Again, on the tariffs, what does that mean for food? If you have no food and beverage and you're doing a limited service property, that's something that you're concerned a little bit less about. I'm also tracking the labor market. What does it mean for unemployment growing at the rate that it does in certain municipalities? Where are jobs shifting? Are you paying attention to major economic developments that are happening, and what does that mean for hotel supply? Are you just looking at things that are distressed, but the area is not depressed? Sometimes the area is on a downward trend. What are some of those things? I'm looking at what are the major employers. I'm looking at a lot of times that micro environment could be perfectly fine, or it could be on the uptick. Or sometimes there's very specific incentives available for you because they recognize we are not as sexy as some of these other municipalities. We have to do some things to get the investors charged up. And that could be a variety of tax breaks. all sorts of new market tax credits, also some of that other esoteric things that make some of these deals very frothy. But other thing that we're looking at politically is immigration. And what does that mean for the labor at your specific property? Is it or is it not an impact? Number one. Number two, what does it also mean for folks coming across the border? If you have a hotel close to the Canadian border and that's slowing down, that's a very different conversation in terms of you looking to buy a hotel there versus someplace else that's on the uptick because there's a major economic demand generator coming in. GE building a factory, Intel doing, their chip plant in Ohio. All of those things matter, and you have to look at it specifically hotel to hotel. So you'll hear people talk about, well, interest rates are high, and they're not wrong, across recent history, but does the deal pencil or no, right? There's still a number in which it makes sense. And if you can get it at that number, great. And if you can't, move on. And that's what I do, right? I say, well, this is the actual number. And that's what the disconnect is. It's folks like us that from our community are looking at hotel deals right now, but they don't necessarily know what they're looking at. How do you know just because they're selling it for $8 million that it's worth $8 million? It could be worth $6 million. It could be worth 7.5. It could be worth 9 million. Sometimes people undervalue hotels because the ownership is just ready to get out and they may not understand some of the economic stuff, or they're not willing to invest and sit and wait for those things to happen. So while there's a lot of things going on in the larger, broader environment as it relates to US, I'm still very long on this sector. I think that it's the perfect time for you to start your journey. I think that as long as it's the right deal and the right opportunity, it still makes sense for you to invest.
Thank you, because that's been the number one question and concern for a lot of people is, with everything going on, is this the right time? And I'm someone that I like the Warren Buffett school of investing that says when people are fearful, you be courageous. And so I've been seeing a lot of good stuff out there that I'm looking at.
And then also keep in mind too, just in the White House right now, there is somebody that's hotel affiliated.
Right. That was a big thing. Election night, someone asked me and I said, well, I mean, that's where he made his money. And if you think he's self-interested, then, get interested in the same things.
100%. Well said. Get in where you fit in, as the old folks have said. So this is a perfect time for you to fit in. At the end of the day, it can still make sense. And the thing that makes me most passionate about it, and you've heard me talk about this, Ramel, is that it creates jobs. And we're talking about, 1 in 25 jobs is supported by the lodging industry in the US. That is a very, very real thing. And the fact that somebody like me, somebody like you, somebody from a similar community can have influence over jobs in a time like this, I mean, there's no greater reward, right? Like, we can sit here, we can shut this podcast off and we can create an app and flip it. And we did great things for our personal economies. Like, our kids are going to be straight. But what does it look like? And that's the difference between generational wealth and generational change, right? You have the opportunity to promote generational change through something like this that creates jobs.
Absolutely. I've said in discussions, you can buy a hotel and set your family up forever, right? No matter what job someone has an interest in, they could find it in that hotel building. I don't care if they're interested in finance, law, engineering, design, customer service. There's a job for them at that hotel, and that hotel can support. Just closing it out, for someone who's listening and considering getting into hotel ownership, what's the best way for them to start building a relationship with a hotel broker like yourself?
Sure. The first thing, as I would say, is ask if the hotel broker is comfortable. Ask how they get compensated on doing buyer representation. That's a lot longer kind of conversation that you and I have had, and I've had with some other folks, but ask how they get compensated. The second thing is Ask them if they know how to assign a valuation and or underwrite a deal. There's some hotel brokers that may not have that experience, right? They just do. And it took me a long time to learn it. I was not a spreadsheet jockey. I was not a mathlete when I started, right? My background is hotel operations. So it took me a while to develop that skill set, but I understand it at a very granular level because I've been a housekeeping manager. I've been a front office manager. I've been an AGM of a seafood restaurant in a hotel. I've managed, 2,000 key properties. I've been in gaming hotels. Like I've seen a lot of it. So having that level of experience, so really get to understand what their experience is specific to hotels. Ask them how comfortable they are working with first-time buyers. That is a very different process. That's somebody that has to be comfortable with being patient, with business development. And it's not a sale, it is a business development, because this person may be working, you may be working with this hotel broker for 1 year, 2 year, before you transact, right? Hopefully it's not that long, but again, these deals have very, very long life cycles. And the final thing is values. Ask them, see if there's value alignment. A lot of folks, again, this is part of this is investment. It is investment sales. So just be cautious in terms of what they have to gain and how they have to gain it, and understand what their skill sets are. And does it align with what your values are? If you're community oriented, if you have 25 partners, 40 partners, all of those things, like just being honest about that and see if they're okay with it. Some of these cats will rock with you. Some of them will not. Some of them will say that they will. And then 90 days later, like they're just slow to return your calls. So what does it look like to keep these folks engaged? The specific answer is working with me is that we have multiple conversations about that up front, right? You get to, kind of see how I move. I always encourage people to check my reputation in the industry, check it in the community. Look at the track record, look at what I've done, look at what I'm focused on, look at what the issues that I've spoken out on, look at the lens that I'm looking at the hotel investment through. Because my concern at the end of the day is always going to be the buyer, right? If I'm doing acquisitions consulting, is do you make money? Right? If that's what you told me is important to you, all these other things are important. We can have the generational wealth conversation. I know you want to get your son or daughter on, all these type of people. You got a cousin you trying to plug into the business, but doesn't make money, doesn't make sense. And is this the trigger that we should be pulling at this moment, at this target? So all of those things are going to be important as folks start their journey. And then also just be available to learn, be available to pivot, and be open-minded.
Thank you so much for that. So, and get in touch with you, how can they do so?
Yeah, absolutely. The best way is folks can reach me on LinkedIn. So you can find me. The first name is Omari, Omari. Last name is Head, Head. Feel free to shoot me a message there. Shoot me a message on LinkedIn. On Instagram as well. That one, I don't check the DMs as much, but please do. And like Ramel said at the beginning, it's Hip Hop Hotel Broker. So definitely tap in. I'm always doing kind of free information on Sundays, just giving you a quick update of what's happening in the industry, some news that you can use that is of great value. And of course, you can shoot me an email, and that is ohead, Head, at ParamountLodging.com. So that's ohead at ParamountLodging.com. And of course, you'll likely see me in these industry streets. I'm moving around. Ramel and I keep bumping into each other at conferences. If I'm in this city, I call them and we pull up. So a lot of it is me at conferences. A lot of it is me sometimes just randomly in your city. So you would be surprised some of the places that I'm at. So just tap in with me, and we may be able to meet in person.
Great. And like I always say, everyone, here, our mission, is to learn, earn, and then return. And if you're interested in learning a little more about the hotel space, scan this QR code, and it'll take you to the link to our free hotel investment guide, and you can learn more about the hotel space. So I want to thank the number one hotel broker in the world, Mr. Omari Head, for joining us. And I'd like to thank you all for tuning in. Make sure you like this episode, subscribe, and share with your friends. All right, everyone, take care.
Peace.
Thank you for tuning into another episode of the Economic Empowerment Podcast, where we break down the barriers to wealth and create pathways to financial freedom. I hope today's conversation gave you valuable insights and inspired you to take action on your journey toward economic empowerment. If you enjoyed this episode, don't forget to subscribe, rate, and leave a review. It helps us reach more people who are ready to transform their financial future. For more resources, updates, and investment opportunities, visit rdleecp.com or follow us on Economic Empowerment Pod on all social platforms. Until next time, remember, wealth isn't just built, it's learned, earned, and shared. Stay empowered.